Bienvenido a su programa Política Entre Amigos. Estamos haciendo ahora la serie, ya pasó la preliminaria y ahora estamos en las finales. Tenemos los 8 candidatos de los que están aspirando para los 4 puestos de concejales por toda la ciudad de Boston. Y aquí ya hemos entrevistado todo. Hoy vamos a tener una de las candidatas que está aspirando, la presidenta del Consejo, Ruthie Leyun, que es presidenta del Consejo y aspirante a reelección. Y en la preliminaria, como hicimos el análisis, ella salió muy bien, es más, quedó en el primer puesto. También estamos haciendo entrevistas con los candidatos de los diferentes distritos, porque la idea, y muchos, habían varios que no tenían oposición en las preliminarias, porque habían solamente 2 candidatos. Y ahora estamos en las finales y tenemos con nosotros algunos de esos candidatos y los que han quedado en finales, donde habían más de 2 y quedan solamente los que están en la contienda, que ahora en noviembre se eligen para elegir los distritos. Y como le hemos dicho, en el distrito 7 va a haber una persona nueva, porque ahí es donde quedó vacante la posición, donde estaba la candidata que tuvo algunos problemitas, Tani Anderson, y ahí vamos a tener un nuevo concejal. Hoy tenemos un invitado que está aspirando, una persona que tiene experiencia, ha trabajado en el gobierno, y él está aspirando para concejal por el distrito 5, y se trata de Winston Pierre. Winston, welcome, my friend.
Thank you.
And first, I want to, congratulate you. We celebrate active participation in politics. You say, vota, vota, siempre vota. Always vote, and it's always good to have the ideas and the issues, and make sure that our community participates. That is how we protect what we have built, and that is how our voice is heard. So first of all, taking that step and putting your name on the ballot, it takes a lot of courage, and we appreciate that. So Winston, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background and experience, and why did you decide to run for City Council?
Gracias. And buenas noches, mi nombre Winston Pierre. It's an honor to be here, and thank you so much for all of you listening. I grew up in a working class family who taught me a lot about the values of hard work, community, and faith. For a long time, I've worked with community, young people, senior citizens, helping people to get pathway to your citizenship, helping people with housing, helping young people to learn how to advocate for themselves. I believe in our community what we need the most now is being respected, being treated with dignity. That's why I'm running for office. I'm running because I want to make sure every voice is captured, that everyone is fairly and equitably represented in what city has to offer. In terms of work I've done, I've worked as a community organizer where we have passed the Community Preservation Act, which is now providing first-time home buyer between $5,000 to $25,000 for down payment assistance. I've worked with senior citizens in making sure seniors, making sure that there's accessibility is very important. I've worked with young people, making sure there's pathway for job. So to me, this race is not about like policy, it's about dignity. How do we make sure our people can participate in the civic and economic aspect of our city?
Okay. So Winston, there's a lot of pressing issues now. We're in interesting times, you know.
Right.
What are the 3 top issues that you would address for the district and for the city in general? What are the 3 areas that you think need most attention and you would address in your first month in the
Absolutely.
job?
Well, the first thing I'll try to address is housing. Housing is too expensive in the city of Boston. We need to find a pathway to stabilize rent so renter get displaced. We need to find a way to buy more housing for young people who aspire to be able to be a homeowner can stay where they live. Second thing that's very important to me is public safety. When I talk about public safety, I'm not talking about police. I'm talking about better school. I'm talking about better park. I'm talking about mental health. I'm talking about creating places where people can feel home and safe. And the third thing that's very important in my platform is education and job. To me, they go hand in hand. One of the many things I'm calling for right now, I'm calling for in our school program, we need to incorporate job training into every after-school program. And this is not about, again, policy. It's about understanding the future. It's about understanding the present. In this economy, we need to be able to train young people that when they graduate, they can get a job. In this economy, we need to create pathway for new arrival so they can quickly navigate the job market. So that's what I'm going to focus on in my first month, making sure we have the pipeline, making sure we have the structure to build more affordable housing, protect senior citizens, protect renter, invest in our youth by creating pathway within BPS so young people can learn skills as early as 10th grade.
You know, housing clearly is a key issue. In both areas that you spoke, the rental is almost impossible for working families as the rent is so high, and also the dream of buying your own home too.
Right.
So there are some programs, and there are, so I hope, a number of initiatives where they have different set-asides and different funds and so on.
Right.
What are some of the things that you support, and what are some of the things that you would bring in, you know, to make sure that more affordable housing is built and that it's accessible to the working class?
Absolutely. So the number one we have to do is to do inventory. When we're talking about affordable housing, where are we going to build them? Affordable to whom? Currently, the city of Boston has about 1,300 parcels of land available. Those are parcels of land that are ready to be built. I'm going to push the city as a city planner to use what we call public land for public good, using this available parcel land to build more housing, right? And number two, we need to find a way to protect tenants. Under our leadership, if you know that we get elected, we're going to work very close with whoever the mayor to make sure that we hold landlord accountable. You cannot increase someone's rent 50 or 20% within a year. It makes no sense, right? We have to come with legislations. We have to come with different incentives to let landlord know, no, we're not gonna do that to renters. At the same token, we're gonna make sure that we also protect landlord as well. But in the immediate, one way we solve for the housing crisis we have right now is to build more housing. Housing that is truly affordable, that people can stay and live.
So from what you said, you support maybe some controls on rent,
Absolutely.
having a percentage, and also there's some initiatives to turn some of the office space that now we have a lot unused into housing and so on, and also the first-time home buyer. You know, there's a lot of people that need assistance.
Right.
So you would grow that? Would you support
Absolutely.
those
Not
things?
only I would grow that, and one thing you might know that in 2016, I was the campaign manager who had passed the Community Preservation Act. The Community Preservation Act, if you are a first-time home buyer in the city of Boston right now, you can qualify between 5 to 25,000 that you can use for down payment assistance. What I will do, I will try to grow the program. So we lower the eligibility for people to be able to participate in that program, and also substantially increase the amount of money for people can use for down payment assistance. So we have a record of doing that as an advocate, and as a city councilor, we will do more to make sure we protect the dreams of many people who want to be a homeowner in the city of Boston.
Okay, and the answer to supporting rent control and making
Absolutely.
sure, yeah. And you said on public safety, and it's a multi-pronged issue.
Right.
As you said, feeling safe in the parks, in the city, and so on. And you see near here where the studio is, we still have an issue with drug use.
Right.
And the other thing is making sure that people, workers and immigrants and all feel safe.
Absolutely.
And what are some of the issues that you think we need to make sure we continue, and how would you make it safer, improve on what we have, and do you support making sure that all people feel like they can communicate with the law enforcement?
Absolutely. That's the thing that we need to do. We need to build trust between the city of Boston and our community. And to be able to do that, number one, where we are, we have to need to be able to take care of veterans and homeless. And people who are experiencing mental health crisis, whether right here near us with drug use at Mass and Cass, whether young people with autism, we need to create structure to support those folks, and that's part of public safety. The second thing that is equally important as we talk about public safety is better home, better schools, better park. To be able to have that sense of safety, you need to be home and feel home. And for too long, too many residents in the city of Boston have been felt ignored. For too long, too many residents in the city of Boston have been felt pushed out. And we cannot talk about public safety, real safety, without making sure we stabilize people home, without making sure we raise the minimum wage, right? Without making sure we taking care of our school, without making sure we taking care of our veterans and homeless right here in the city of Boston. And one point of emphasis to me when we're talking about public safety, the city of Boston is not broke. We have a $4.6 billion budget. What we need to do more is prioritize our resources, our money on the most vulnerable residents among us. That include working class family, that include immigrant, that include young people. We can do that. There is money for it to do it. And that is why, to your point, representation matters. We need someone who understands. We need someone who can say, I see you, I hear you, I've been there, and we don't need to stay there. We need to move the needle and making sure the city of Boston is a city that works for everyone.
You know, you mentioned education. We always promote that. That's the key to all doors, and that's a great equalizer when you make sure, and we see that there's a lot of attacks, you know, the Department of Education and so many things happening. But in Boston, we have a number of initiatives. There's a lot of buildings that need to be upgraded and so on. But there's a lot of investment, as you said, the budget in education. And also we have the, I would say the best institutions of higher education. We need to make sure that we work, and there's a number of programs, you know, the pilot program and so on. And also you mentioned vocational training, because that we got to make sure that our young people are able to access all of those jobs in technology, you know, the robotics and so on. How do we make sure? And you mentioned the plumbers and electricians, they're needed no matter what happens in technology. So tell me about that. What do you see the education?
So when I'm looking at the educations, I'm looking at the city that we are, city of Boston. It's a city that is known across the globe as being the best for educations. That's higher ed, as you mentioned. When we are looking at our BPS, it to me makes little sense for a school like Madison's Park is struggling for resources while we have Northeastern nearby. What I would propose as a city council is using those big universities who, by the way, do not pay taxes. They invest in something they call payment in lieu of taxes. Using as a leverage, that as a leverage to ask them to mentor, partner with our school. For instance, if you are at Boston University, I will make sure there's a partnership with Brighton High School. If you are Madison Park, I will make sure, or O'Brien, I will make sure there's a partnership with Northeastern University. So our young people, as they coming in, they get to experience the best that the city has us to offer in terms of education. The second important thing I will do is making sure in our after-school program there is job training. It's possible. I've seen it done. In most of the schools that our parents have been trying to send us, like the medical program, there are young kids as early as 10 to 9th grade are learning coding. You know what we can do with coding? Those certificate programs between 6 to 18 months, you will make 100,000. So why can't we do that in our BPS? Why can't we make sure when students are graduate from BPS, they get what we call hard skill? There are two kinds of skill. There's soft skill, which is learning how to talk to people, how to do an interview with Mr. Wan. There's the hard skill. How do you record that videos, right? How do you learning something about electricity, about plumbing? And all those skill set are skill set, not only skill set for the future, but there's a skill set of now. We also have to understand the economy we are in. This is an emerging artificial economy where everything is moving to high technology. And the best way to prepare for that, number one, is to make sure our young people are trained. And number two, we also have to look into people that are coming in our country who have the passions or looking for jobs. We have to have strong apprenticeship program, whether it's plumber, whether it's electrician, whether it's physical assistants. There are minimum 200 jobs, 200 trade that only require between 6 to 18 months. In this economy, in the city of Boston, everyone should be trained. Everyone should be able to make a wage that is a livable wage. That's why that piece of education of my platform is so important, because it's about not only investing in people, it's also making sure the economy works for everyone.
You know, you mentioned all that training, especially in the city where we have so many in the industry of robotics, nanotechnologies, and so on, because we have MIT and we have, and so there's a lot of companies here. So would you also make sure they leverage? I know there's a number of programs that are working, but we probably need to expand. Are you have any ideas on how to?
We need to expand and streamline it. So too many times we have a lot of programs where people are working in silo. What we need to do is create a streamlined process where everybody knows this program. What we need to do is making sure those companies who don't pay taxes, by the way, let me emphasize on that. When they don't pay taxes, they offer some sort of community benefit. That community benefit has to be clear to you and I. We need to know why is Boston University is not paying taxes. We need to know why Northeastern is not paying taxes. We need to know why Harvard, by the way, with billions of dollars of endowment, not paying taxes. Now, we're not going after the university. We're just making sure they do the fair share. If you're not paying taxes, making sure my son, your granddaughter, your child can get a piece of the pie, right? So those are the things, those are the common sense that we're going to bring in the city of Boston, because everything we propose, whether public safety, whether it's housing, whether better education, we want to make sure that we do that without the increased taxes on you. We have the resources. We have the money. We just need to have someone who can help prioritize the need of your family and my family.
Yeah, so in the employment piece, and definitely there's those that are non-profits, education, but there's a lot of for-profit, scientific, and a lot of companies are based in and around, you know, our city. And there they can also make sure they hire, you know, and have programs. And you mentioned employment being a key, of course, and economic development. And we know that in our communities, a lot of the small businesses have been by people of color. You see it all around the city, in East Boston, Roxbury, all over. How do we make sure that they have access to the capital and also be included in contracts and so on, because that's how you make sure they stay stable. And they've been moving forward. How do we make sure that they are sustained, especially now when you see so many places that are closed due to COVID and changes in our living? Any ideas in that area?
No, absolutely. I get a couple ideas. Number one, I've been practicing diversity for the past 10 years. And one thing I know about diversity is not about the color of the skin, it's about where you spend your money. If you tell me you care about diversity, tell me how many Hispanic for the Hispanic Heritage Month that you are hiring to cater. Not only for Hispanic Heritage Month, but beyond that. Tell me how many black and brown businesses are you spending money with? One thing we'll make sure that we do is, as City of Boston, is for every contract, if a small business cannot consume the contract, meaning if they cannot take the contract, and that a big company take the contract, that company, for them to succeedly getting the contract, they have to be able to show me how many prime contractors that are Latino, how many prime contractors that are veterans, that are women-owned, they're gonna hire. That's how we'll move the needle. Because the money, the contract, most of the time they come from the city. If it's from the city, that means it's your taxpayer money. If it's from the city and we say we're creating generational wealth, that we're creating city that work for everyone, therefore when they get this contract, they need to hire you. They need to hire me. And that piece of accountability, that's why I will bring to the City of Boston. I will make sure like every single time there's a contract, there's at least 25% of minority-owned business participation. No negotiation on that.
You also mentioned, and it goes hand in hand with economic development and also transportation.
Absolutely.
We know from, during the pandemic that the essential workers, a lot of people, from the neighborhoods and people of color and, the working class in general, from all over the neighborhoods. And that's our industry here, and our hospitality industry is so big here with the historical tourism and so on. And then the transportation has always been an issue, because we, even at certain times, we have no public transportation. And some of these folks, especially if they work late shifts, sometimes it's very difficult. Ideas on that. You mentioned, how do we improve on
Absolutely. So the transportation is something that is overseen by the state, right? And the beautiful thing of the City of Boston is that we have a seat on the MBTA board. So what we can do is using that seat to make sure that we push for the change that we need. One of the things that I've seen the city's done for the past 2 years was a great success story, but we need to do more. They create a pilot program where they make certain buses, certain routes, I think 28 from Mattapan, and 23 was free. I also believe that at a certain point before the pandemic, we had extended hour for the train that all the working class family to be able to take the train past 2 a.m., right? I think we need to go back to that conversation. The city has to dedicate a certain amount of money to help working class family. Because at the end of the day, what I truly believe is government should work for you. What I truly believe is the resources, the budget of our city should always reflect your need and my need. And that's why I'm running. I'm that way to make sure that 4.6 billion that we have for only 12 months is a 4.6 billion that reflect the need of your children, the need of your mom or my mom. They need to make sure our streets are safe. They need to make sure there's more affordable housing that is being built. They need to make sure that my kid is going to school. I know that my kid will get the best of education. I know that when my kid is graduate, there's a well-paying job waiting for my son. And that's the things that are important.
Okay, and so right now you're one of the 2 candidates left in this race for the District 5.
Yes.
And tell me, why should the voters of District 5 elect you to be their next city councilor?
I am someone who understands. As an immigrant myself, I know what it means to struggle. I also know what it means when those opportunities are open. Those opportunities opened for me when I started my career as a dishwasher from Fenway Park, and someone gave me an internship to Washington, D.C. From Washington, D.C., here I am. In the past of 2 years, I went from a dishwasher to being on Capitol Hill. I know what it means when people are getting opportunity. They can succeed. It's the same concept. Our working class family, they are people that are full of potential. All you're looking for is opportunity. If you elect me, I will listen. I will follow up. I will make sure the doors of opportunity are open for our children, for our family, that will protect our senior citizens, We invest in education. We protect our small business. As important as anything else, we treat everyone in the city of Boston with dignity.
Ok, entonces recuerden, tienen que ir a votar en noviembre 4 y van a haber votos antes, el que vote temprano cuando pueda, y estamos hablando del Distrito 5 que incluye el área, si usted vive en Hyde Park, Mattapan, Reedville y Rosendale. Y recuerde, vote, vote, siempre vote, esa es la voz y la fuerza de nuestra comunidad. Vamos a regresar con su programa Política entre Amigos. Ok, estamos de regreso en esta serie, conozca sus candidatos. Tuvimos la preliminaria y tenemos los últimos 8 y con nosotros tenemos la presidenta del consejo, muy conocida en nuestra comunidad, habla nuestro idioma, siempre presente y mucha razón, y por eso ella quedó en primer lugar en esta votación en general. Y estamos hablando de nuestra amiga Ruthie Lejeune. Bienvenida, Ruthie.
Muchas gracias.
Y primero, felicitaciones.
Gracias.
Yo creo que te dieron un voto de confianza. Todavía
Sí.
ahora tenemos las finales.
Sí.
Y yo sé que tú estás trabajando fuertemente,
Sí.
siempre escuchando. So, Ruthie, háblanos de ti, sobre tu experiencia y todas las... Ya tienes varias términos y también ahora como presidenta del Consejo. ¿Cuál es la razón por qué tú decidiste lanzarte en la vida pública, como City Councilor?
Claro. Entonces, buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Ruthie y soy la presidenta del Consejo aquí en Boston y soy la hija de inmigrantes de Haití y soy muy orgullosa de servir la comunidad aquí en Boston. Yo puedo entender español más mejor que yo puedo hablar, entonces yo voy a hablar inglés, pero muchas gracias de invitarme aquí para hablar con la comunidad. It is a pleasure for me to serve the entire City of Boston on the Boston City Council. I decided to run for office because we needed people who are going to fight for communities that are too often underrepresented, who are going to fight for better schools, and who are going to leave it all on the table when we're talking about questions of justice, making sure that our families have enough food, making sure that our schools are quality schools, making sure that everyone has a housing, that everyone is able to live and thrive in a clean and safe and green environment, and making sure that everyone has a job that pays a living wage. Those are the 5 principles that I live off of as a city councilor at large. También yo soy abogada. I'm a lawyer. I went to Boston Public Schools here, the daughter of immigrants who didn't go to college but who worked really hard so that my story could be possible, from Boston Public School to schools to Harvard Law School, and now serving the people of Boston as a Boston City Council, as a Boston City Councilor, and as the president of the Boston City Council. It's such a joy to be able to help people solve their problems. I'm a politician. I'm a lawyer. But at the end of the day, my greatest label is being a problem solver, because my job, our government's job, is to make your life easier and to help solve problems every single day. And so Juan said it was a vote of confidence, me coming in first, topping the ticket, and that's how I see it as well. I take it not for myself, but as a vote that the residents of Boston agree with my leadership and in the direction that we're going as a city. And as a daughter of this city, that makes me so happy and so proud.
No, now more than ever, we need to make sure that all those issues that we've been working to advance are protected. And,
Yes.
And in the council also, there's more power now, because now the council doesn't just approve, but also participates actively. And clearly we have to take all this happening in consideration. You've been in the vanguard of so many issues. What do you think are the 3 main issues at this point? We'll talk about all this, that you think need to make sure we address and put in the front burner?
Yeah. There are 3 issues, and I'm going to give a bonus issue, sadly, because of the moment that we're in.
Yeah.
The issue number 1 is housing. I started my career as a housing attorney representing families facing eviction and foreclosure. The number 1 call we get is about affordable housing. How do we provide more housing? I was proud that one of the first things that I did was place into permanent housing a man who had been chronically homeless for 5 years. And this morning, I started my morning at 8 o'clock talking to someone who had a court case before a judge yesterday. And what's great is I'm able to bring my legal experience into this job. I gave her the exact language that she should use before the judge in order to be able to get another court date with the lawyer. And so housing is the number 1 issue. The number 2 issue is schools. I am grateful that my parents worked really hard for me to go to school, were really involved, and I was able to go on and become whatever I wanted to be, and that was a lawyer. Unfortunately, my story is too much of an anomaly. It's not happening enough. And so we need to make sure that our schools are really graduating our kids to be whatever they want to be and can be. So it's housing, schools, and number 3, we have to make sure we're getting basic city services right. So picking up our trash on time, making sure rodents aren't climbing through the trash, fixing our potholes. We have to do basic city government, and we have to do that right. The bonus issue, I would say right now, unfortunately, is the issue of immigration. Too many of our residents are being disappeared off of the street because of ICE, because of the federal government. I was just on a call with someone who said we need to do a better job of talking to parents who may not have legal status, or may, President Trump has been stripping people, taking away people's legal status. How do we make sure that they have a plan in place for their children if something were to happen? And so I would say that those are the major issues that we're facing right now. There are special issues that we're facing right now because of the terror of this federal administration.
Housing, clearly right now the rents are unaffordable for working class, and the dream of buying a home that's slipping away from so many people. There are some initiatives. Sadly, we have the geography. We have a city that is not large in size, but there are a lot of opportunities. So there's a number of programs that have been implemented, you've been part of. What are some of the things that you've been working on and doing to make sure that we create more affordable housing? Now there's opportunity now with the office space and different things, and making sure that we have a stable rent base, like rent control, and also how do we make sure that the working class are able to afford housing? How do we incentivize or assist? And I know in all those areas, so some of the ideas that you've already been advancing, and what will you be wanting to grow?
So yes, the City Council did support a bill that would do something called rent stabilization, a form of rent control that would stabilize rents and limit how much they can increase. We hear from so many people about really big increases. Your rent goes from $2,000 one year to $3,000 the next year. Who can afford that? Too many of our residents can't afford that. That bill, unfortunately, is at the State House, and we don't know if it's going to move forward. We have invested millions of dollars in affordable housing, rental opportunities, and home ownership. And sometimes there are properties where people are renting, and the owner will sell it to someone who wants to kick everyone out and make a profit. We've invested in making sure in certain parts of the city that they can stay in their homes, and we try to make sure that a nonprofit buys it instead of someone who's just greedy and wants to kick everyone out. And one of the laws that I'm working on is if there's a school that's closing or a city building that's coming offline, we need to prioritize that our property, we have to prioritize affordable housing. And so that's some of the stuff that I've worked on the Boston City Council. I've led the charge in getting more vouchers for our residents who need it, more home ownership opportunities, both when I was as I'm on the council and prior, getting $10 million of funding for home ownership. So I've been doing a lot on this front.
And the education, which is clear the great equalizer, and we see, you are well educated and all that you've been able to accomplish. We see a lot of threats to that, and from the top down, the Department of Education and so on. How do we make sure that we continue to move forward here? And continue. We have a great investment in education, but there's so much need. And how to use also, if you would touch on vocational training and some of the things that our young sometimes don't have the equipment, especially now that there's different types of classrooms with the technology and so on. I know it's such a broad area. And also higher education. How do we make sure that we have a good early education, the high school years, and to go on to the great institutions of higher education that we have? So along all that area, which is such a huge area, what are the things that have worked for you and that you see we can do to make sure our children also have an opportunity at a great education?
That's a great question, Juan. And the thing is, education is the great equalizer, but it's only the case if we invest and if we start early enough. So we need to create more universal pre-K seats so that more of our kids are getting into the hands of someone who's going to teach them into learning as soon as possible. We also need to make sure that, one of the things that I proposed is a Boston School Building Authority that would do the work of building new schools. So one of the reasons we have to build new schools is we can't compete if someone is, if a new charter school is being built and it looks nice, a nice shiny building, you're going to want to go to the nice shiny building. And so we have to do better work of building more schools, but at the same time closing the schools that need to be closed, of consolidating schools. And the reason why school buildings matter is because that policy, infrastructure is policy, right? The nicer a building, the more updated the equipment and the technology, the more you can teach your kids about AI, artificial intelligence, the more you can have better science labs and prepare our kids for jobs. And in Boston, we know we are the state of meds and eds, medical institution and educational facilities. So we need to make sure that we're preparing our young kids for jobs. And Madison Park, we should have 3 years ago worked on getting a new Madison Park. We're behind the 8 ball on making sure that we have a great vocational education school. So many other cities and towns have schools where there are long wait lists. We are doing a disservice to our kids who could be graduating high school and entering the trades or with a craft. So we have a lot of work. I've been to Madison Park now, I don't know how many times, but we have a lot of work to do to really get a state-of-the-art building to try to stabilize the leadership at Madison Park and to stabilize the teaching that's happening so that we get better academic outcomes. One last thing I'll say is that the work of vocational education, yes, it's important for us to be doing it at Madison Park, but we also need it to be happening in our other schools as well.
You know, in the city, we have great professionals and a lot of programs, and we've done, you know, in many studies and so on, we have done well. There's so much more that we can do, but clearly a lot of our children don't have the opportunities to higher education. Also, we have the best institutions of higher education right here in our backyard, and also a lot of the industries right now in medicine and technology and robotics and so on. How do we make sure that we take all of those resources and partner and make sure that they also include our children? And I know that you've been trying to work some partnerships and ideas on that. But
I think, you know, we need to do a better job of coordinating the resources that we have here. One of the things that I like about my proposal, the Boston School Building Authority, is that the funding would come from the institutions. Right now is not the best time to implement it because of everything that's happening at the federal government, but that's a way of making sure that our educational institutions, and all of our institutions, frankly, are buying into our school system and buying into the pipeline because they would have a vested interest in helping us build schools. I also always say this, my father is 76 years old, still working inside of a kitchen at Northeastern. My father is one of the smartest people that I know, who didn't have a college education, but what if Northeastern had identified in him 20 years ago the potential for him to be more than as someone who worked in a kitchen? So how are universities, how are institutions looking at their own staff and helping them climb up the ladder? So those are conversations that I want to continue to have with some of our leaders here in the city of Boston so that we can provide what's most important to our residents, which is economic mobility, so that they can make a higher salary, so they can pay for these expensive rents or these down payments for homes. All of that is necessary. I love saying that, like, social capital is so important. So who you know, making sure you're building a social network. For too many of our communities, for too many black and brown communities, that social capital doesn't really always exist in their families or in their neighborhoods. And so we have a responsibility to have greater mentorships, to provide job opportunities for our young people because of the work of the City Council. We have a record number of youth summer jobs for our young kids. When we have to continue more of that to connect our young people to opportunities. Too often you can't be what you don't see. And so we are trying to introduce our young people to opportunities and to worlds that they haven't been introduced to before.
You know, you mentioned city services, and clearly we have a beautiful city. I think, you know, a city that we love so much. And we have great parks, a lot of historic things, and a lot of improvements have been made. But that's a basic thing. You know, people want to make sure that they can enjoy those parks. And right now we see the problem with addiction and so on. Mm-hmm. So and also making sure that you know you respond to the concerns. You know, the lights going out and the things that make the quality of life issues doable. You know, for our seniors and so on, and that they feel City Hall is addressing them in a timely way. What are some of the areas that you concentrate? I know you keep an open door policy and respond quickly, but what are some of the things that you want to make sure is in place? I know we have the 311, different ways to call and report, but from the city council, there are so many ways to address it. Not only do you make sure that the executive branch is handling it, but also the funding and that whole process that you participate in.
So one example is we want to hold absentee landlords a lot more accountable. So these are people who own properties and who let their dumpsters overflow with trash, who aren't taking care of their property. Because you can put in 311 as many times as you want, but if these landlords and these property owners aren't being held accountable, nothing is going to change. So we've increased the fine amount that we can fine them substantially, so that maybe with a bigger fine, there's more of an incentive for them to maintain and clean their properties. But one of the things that we're trying to do, that we've been trying to do, is make it easier to place a lien, a legal lien on the home. That makes it harder for them to sell the property or to do anything unless they address the underlying issues of poor management. So I think we have to hold people a lot more accountable to the problems that they are causing in our city, and that's one of the things that my office has been working on a lot.
You know, on that, the people that hold property, sometimes the absentee landlords, and also some lots that could be used for development. You see they're speculating and so on with all of that. So how about, do you have an idea of making sure that all of those buildable lots are somehow placed in some system that will allow for the building of housing?
Yes. We've talked about this a little bit in the city. So if there's a vacant lot, first we have to find out who owns it. If it's a city that owns it, the city has been doing work with disposing of those open lots for home ownership opportunities, for different opportunities. Not every open lot is going to be for housing. Sometimes you maybe want it for a park or for some other reason. But the city has been selling the land for $1 to nonprofit developers to build housing for more of our residents. For private lots that are well maintained by someone, there's not much that the city can do there. Although we've explored the idea of a vacancy tax or an unused property lot tax, so that we can incentivize people to build, to do something. One of the reasons why it's important for us to be able to place liens on a property where they're not maintaining proper code or where they've been delinquent for a number of issues is so that the city can then one day take back the land, and so that we can develop or do what is in the best interest of the people of the city of Boston with it.
So it's a process. It has to be intentional policy.
Yes. And it has to be legal.
That gets to that legal, but and there always. And then you said that bonus issue, which we see it all around, is something that we never thought we'd see.
I know.
You know, mass people just, disrespecting folks and so on, working people. And
taxpayers,
so
our residents,
taxpayers,
our people that we love here.
Absolutely, and you see all that are in fear, DACA recipients and TPS and so on, that we know the contributions they make. You go all around, because a lot of these people starting businesses and so on. What can we continue to do, and I know you're in the vanguard, to make sure that they feel safe in the city and that we resist this type of activities?
If you see ICE in the city of Boston, report it to Luce. Remember that we are each other's keeper. That is our greatest calling. Our residents, whether they speak English or not, whether they speak Spanish, Haitian Creole, they are our residents. They are taxpayers here in our city. Their kids go to our schools. We need to be on the lookout. We need to resist. So many people are giving in to what this Trump administration is trying to do. And we have to say that this is our city, and that it includes everyone, and that it belongs to everyone, and that we don't have any kings here in this country. And work hard for a better government and a better city. So there's a lot of work that we have to do. If someone is taken by ICE, the most important thing to do is to immediately make sure that they have legal counsel, that they have a lawyer. You can give my office a call at 617-635-4376, and we would be happy to assist in making sure that whoever is disappeared by ICE, these masked men coming into our communities without our asking, not focusing on criminals, we're focusing on hardworking residents of our city. We need to make sure that they have the legal resources. And one of the things I'm proudest of on the council, this past budget cycle, we invested more money for nonprofit organizations working with immigrant communities to have legal resources to address the nightmare that we are in right now.
The other thing is, as far as all of the essential workers, and we see in transportation, this the T close us down at certain times. We are a city, hospitality, historical tourism, and so on. And some of the workers, sometimes they have to wait hours in order to get home. I know that you've been supporting some of the different initiatives and pilot programs.
Late night tea,
yeah. So tell us about why is that necessary?
If we are a big global city like we claim to be, we need to make sure that we are providing transportation options for everyone, especially our people who are working third shift, people who are working late at night. Public transit is a public good. It's for all of us, and so we need to make sure that we're investing so that everyone can get to and from work. Uber and Lyft isn't viable, isn't really reasonable, it's expensive for people to take every day, so we need to make sure that we are building out a stronger MBTA.
Councilor, we have a couple of weeks more, and then we have the final election here. We say the way that you protect and honor this democracy and all the sacrifices that people have made in order to be able to do this, we have to be active and make sure we vote.
Amen.
So why should the voters of Boston re-elect you to continue to be in their city council?
Because I work really hard, porque yo trabajo muy duro. It's really important to have elected officials who care. I do this work from my heart because I care about our residents. I grew up poor working class family in Mattapan, in Hyde Park, and that I've been able to make it this far is a testament to how this city has invested in me, and I want that to be for everyone. My phone starts ringing at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sure when I'm done with this TV segment, I'll have missed calls that I have to return. I really believe that we can thrive and that everyone can thrive if we are working really hard at making that happen on issues of housing, on our schools, issues of trash and rodents, issues of job opportunity, and making sure that we have a clean and good environment. Those are things that we can do if we work really hard together. My track record of working collaboratively, of working alongside everyone, proves that I care deeply about the city. My topping the ticket, hopefully, as Juan said, is an affirmation that my leadership is good for the city of Boston. And so I would be humbled to earn one of your votes for an at-large city councilor so that I continue doing the people's work, continue bringing my energy, my thoughtfulness to the city of Boston because I love the city so much.
Muy bien, so noviembre 4 hay que salir a votar y van a poder votar también antes, so vote, siempre vote, esa es la voz y la fuerza, Ruthie Loyun, y usted puede votar por ella si vive en cualquier barrio de Boston, ella es concejal por todo Boston. So, muchas gracias por estar en sintonía y nos vemos la próxima semana en su programa Política entre Amigos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, buenas noches a todos, gracias.